gosh. Okay, hello guys. Hi, welcome to Telepresence and welcome to our workshop series. This is the first workshop we're gonna do, and I'm today gonna talk about cardboard prototyping. So what we're generally going to do is we're gonna talk a little bit about why even we're gonna use cardboard, what it's used for, what the best things are. Then we're also going to talk a little bit about the different materials and the different types of cardboard that you can use. We're going to use some different tools. We're going to have a look at all the extra stuff you might need, and we're also going to go over security tips and like the most basic techniques that you need to know. Oh, it's so nice to see you all. Okay, so yeah, for those of you who are here who might not know what's going on, currently the MFA DT graduate students, we're hosting an online show, a digital cyber expo, which is called Telepresence. So in case you have not heard about this, you can also join us on mfadt.space and have a look at the exhibition and also join other workshops that will be coming up after this one. Good. So first question, like why are we even using cardboard for prototyping? Cardboard is a very, very cheap material and it can also look very cheap, but if you do it right, it can also look really, really good, and it can be a very, very accessible, fast and reliable way of prototyping. So I think most of you probably are living in New York at the moment because we have a lot of students from MFA DT coming in. So you have probably noticed how much trash or like cardboard is just lying around the city, so definitely make use of that. There's really some like really good sources. I'm also constantly like reusing stuff that I've bought or kind of scanning if I come by some and see some cardboard trash if there's something that I can use. So yeah, cardboard is accessible, it's cheap, it does not really take a lot of tools to be able to do something really, really great with it. It's also kid safe. You can use it for workshops, you can use it like with your child at home or for other kinds of things, and it's also in a way sustainable because you can reuse a lot of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you're possibly going to encounter if you have a look at cardboard. So the most normal thing you're probably familiar with is like this kind of brownish cardboard, which has like a rough side and a shiny side. And then there's also different types of even this one. So what you see here is a double layered, like, I don't know what you call it in English specifically, but we call it like something like a sandwich cardboard plate. And then you also have like the single layered ones, which is probably the most common one that you're gonna come across. And then also there's like really fine ones. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's also a single layered one, but with very, very like smaller thickness than the other. So those are the basic types. Then we also have like some sort of sandwich foam plates, which are basically two cardboard plates with some foam in the middle, which can also be used for a lot of different things, but we're gonna cover that later. And then also you have the very, very typical type of paper in different kind of thicknesses and heaviness, which you can also use for cardboard prototyping. So the next question is like, what can you use cardboard prototyping for? So scale-wise, everything that is basically the size of an apple up to large scale, full-on automotive prototyping can technically be done with cardboard, but you have to assess your materials according to the size of what you want to build. So if you want to build something really, really tiny that has a lot of curves and stuff and a lot of detail, you might want to go with the thin one. If you build something that is desktop size and does not really have to go through a lot of stress, you might want to go for the super average one-layered wave type of cardboard. And if you want to do something bigger and sturdier, you might want to go for the big ones. You can even do set design with those, and that's basically it from this side. Then also you don't really need a lot of tools, I already said that. So technically you only need an exacto knife and a hot glue gun, which I'm going to plug in now that I see that I've not done this. So yeah, but that's basically all you need. But you can go a little bit crazier with your tools. And I'm a tool maniac myself, so I have all different types of knives. So you have the big box cutter, which is really practical for like cutting out big pieces of cardboard or like just to do some rough cuts and everything. And then there's also like exacto knives, which you're probably familiar with. You can exchange the tips. That's really simple. Just make sure that you always have a really sharp one, otherwise you might get hurt or the cuts will not look good. And then also, like, if you have those exacto knives, there's also different types of blades you can use. So for example, this is kind of the universal blade that I show you guys. You can't really go wrong with this one. I think that's safe. Then there's like a round one, which I personally would say is like really practical for like having kind of curved cuts or something, which just gives you a little bit more control there. Then you also have like really, really fine ones for like really, really tiny cuts. And then there's also like, if you want to go have like very, very fragile cuts or like very detailed things you want to cut out, you might also want to invest in a, what do you call a curve cutter knife, which is really interesting because it is an absolutely tiny knife that I hope I'm not going to poke myself right now. You can move around. So the nice thing is if you cut, it will automatically adjust a little bit while you cut, and it comes for like, it provides like really, really smooth edges, which is very, very nice. Then yeah, also totally average, tiny exacto knives, everything's perfect. Good. Another thing you might need, a cutting mat. Like, you should definitely not cut on your normal table because it's gonna get roughed up, let's say like this, but invest in a small mat. Like, this size should already be fine. You can go smaller, you can go larger. Everything is fine as long as you don't cut the precious heirloom table of your family. That's good. So another thing you might need, rulers. But be advised, please, if you use rulers, plastic rulers specifically, don't use them to cut. Like, you can use them to measure, but the knife and the plastic ruler should not go together. For this, you should have a metal ruler that can take all types of forms. Where's my other one? Ah, yeah, yeah. Or this type of one. In the best case, you have a ruler that has like a thin side and also like a thicker, because this side is really practical for cutting because your knife won't slip that easy. But we're going to talk about safe cutting a little bit later. Next thing we're going to talk about is glue. As I've already said, like, my preferred prototyping tool for cardboard prototyping is a hot glue gun. It just makes things a lot easier. It's fast. After a while, you don't like glue your fingers together that often. But there's also like different types of things you can do. Like, if you have a little bit more complex shapes, you can just simply use tape, like really, really normal tape to kind of fix things together. If you also have things that have to be layered together, you can use like book binding glue or simple glue sticks. Or if you want to cache like a fine material on top of a thicker one, you can also use spray mount, which is also very practical. So yeah, those are basically the tools you need. As I've said, with a hot glue gun or some glue and an exacto knife and a pencil, you're already done. You have everything you need. Just make sure you're cutting somewhere where it's not damaging any important property of you or your family, and everything's good. So yeah, we're gonna take a bit safe cutting next. So what you want to do is also always make sure that the whole tools you're using are really well screwed up and everything is fit in place and nothing is kind of jiggling around. And then you want to make sure that you place your ruler really flat on the surface, not have any kind of dirt in between or something. And then if you want to stand up, because I kind of like to do that, it's like, I don't know if you guys see this. Yeah, maybe this way. So what you never want to do is go with your fingers too close to the edge of the ruler. You don't want to do that. Like, if you really want to have your fingers like I prefer to have them, take them a little bit away. And always make sure, please, that you don't push too much weight on the ruler or on the hand of your knife. You want to fixate things, but you don't want to like put too much pressure on this. Not only can this damage the cardboard, but also the chance that you get hurt if you slip is higher. So there's also like different things you can do. You can also, like, some people prefer to cut like this. Some people prefer to have like only their tips of their fingers in front. Just make sure that whatever you do, there's a certain amount of space to the line where you're cutting. Also, what does it mean to actually make a good cut? So a good cut doesn't necessarily have to involve that you have the sharpest blade of them all. Like if you have to happen like have a blade that's not that sharp anymore, just make sure that you follow the steps and everything is going to be fine. So what you want to do is you place your ruler and you make sure that your fingers are away and you just very finely make a first line. So the first cut definitely doesn't have to cut all of your material. You kind of want to build a pathway of where your knife knows where it has to go in the next run, and just make sure that you're not moving a lot around. And then you can just like find the trail again that you cut the first time and go there again. And you're just gonna go as often as it's needed. Oops. And what you'll receive is a very nice and clear line and no cuts in your fingers, which is good. So yeah, good. Security tips, I'm just gonna check. Okay, yeah. Good. So once we have this out of the sight, like we know how to cut, we know how to properly make a line, we know how to hold our ruler. The next thing we're probably gonna want to talk about is like, what can you even build out of cardboard? So as I've said before, like everything from like the size of an apple to the size of a car you can do with cardboard. But then it's also a question of like, how do you want to build the structure of it? So there's like two major techniques of like cardboard building that you might want to consider, which on the one hand is like layering, which can be pretty practical if you have, for example, a 3D model of something and you want to transfer it into a physical form. Then you can just like slice up the 3D model and like laser cut the cardboard to have like the single shapes that then just need to be glued together. So also like you can make cardboard prototyping really, really digital. And I think for that, that's pretty simple and easy to do in a nice way, and it has like a nice optic to it as well. But then the other option, which is probably more what you're gonna do, is that it's kind of, I would call it like box model making or like shell model making, which is basically you're building something that has the outer shape of what you want to represent, or it has like some form of internal structure but is not completely filled with cardboard. That might be for like weight reasons, that might be for construction reasons, it might also just be like for a cost in case you do buy the cardboard. I prefer to have like the box or shell method, because I don't tend to work with cardboard that much in like a digital prototyping sense, that most of the time I don't want to cut like every layer of it. But I also do have an example of where I did something really, really quickly, which I think I did this like a couple of years ago. It's in bad shape already, I do have to say that. But this was basically like some VR glasses where I could put two phones in order to like display something. And what I did here, what you might see when you look inside, is that the whole thing is like different layers of cardboard glued to one another and then kind of covered with like colored paper and like what's it called, spray mount? Yeah, spray mount. So yeah, that's really cool. It is a good technique. I can definitely recommend it if you do have a laser cutter or something accessible. It makes things a lot easier. You can like cut in nice details. But yeah, we're mostly today going to talk about the box and shell type of model making. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you like basic things like how do you create a proper angle? How do you support angles like to make them structurally rigid? How do you create like joints, and then how do you cover curves? Which is basically everything you need to know, and then kind of you can go to like more complex things. So let's start with the angles. As you've probably noticed before, we're gonna start with like a really, really simple carpet, because I think that's the most accessible one. You're probably gonna come across this one the most. You've probably noticed, as I think I mentioned it even before, it's like it has a rough side and it has a fine side. The only problem is, a fine side and a rough side. And you might want to consider which one you put on the outside of things, but this is kind of like a perfectionism thing. I'm not sure if everybody wants to do that. So what you also have to make sure is, or like what you can also notice, is that this thing actually has a direction. So there's like chambers in here that kind of run like this and not like this. So there's like a direction where the cardboard can break really easily, which is basically like this. So if you have anything that kind of needs force, you don't want to do it like this. You might kind of want to cross them or something so they become more rigid, or you just kind of want to avoid putting stress in this direction, but rather like in this direction, because in this direction you can't really bend it at all. So the next thing we're going to consider is like how, if I want to create an angle, how do I do that? So when I started out cardboard prototyping initially, thought like, oh, that's probably a really smart idea and it's going to make things look so good, was that I tried to consider the grid and then just cut a line along these kind of spaces and then just bend it. So that to a certain degree works really well and is a quite quick and simple way to have like a smooth edge. But then also the thing is the edge is not perfect. So if you want to do it really, really well, you can definitely also go with this another technique that I'm going to show you right now, which is basically, I'm going to create like two pieces here right now. So I'm just going to cut this real quick. So I do want to join these two parts together, but as you can see, like there's not really a way of how they can fit together and look as nicely as this here. So what I want to do is I'm gonna cut a little bit of this cardboard piece here off, but only as much as like this one is thick. So I'm just gonna check a little bit with my ruler, oops, to put it in place, and then just check if this is as thick as the other thing. So, and what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna take the exacto knife and I'm gonna cut very, very loosely. And the important thing here is that I don't actually want to cut this piece completely off. What I want to do is I want to basically cut until the last layer here. So I want to cut up the top layer and I want to cut off the waves, but I don't want to cut the lowest level of the cardboard. You will also be able to kind of hear the difference as soon as you've kind of cut through the waves. And what you can then do is you can just pull this piece here off, and it's going to leave you with this type of weird shape where you have like kind of like a little cliff. And what you can now do is you can properly place these two together and create a really, really nice edge. So right now, time for the hot glue gun. I'm gonna put this together. Also, don't stress out if the hot glue kind of runs over somewhere. You can just pull it off once it's colder. It's not a problem. Just make sure that you don't hurt yourself or burn yourself. Good. Yeah, so that's a really, really fast and clean way to make like a 90-degree, or like other types of degrees. You can also definitely do that clear edge with cardboard, which is like not as fast as this one, but you can see it actually is a little bit nicer. It is a little bit edgier. Also, please excuse that there's tape on the cardboard, but I'm also trying to be sustainable and I reused cardboard. So, yeah. So good. We have the corners. You can do all types of corners with this technique. Super simple stuff. What you can also do in case you do want to have a little bit more like stiffness here, you can also like cut out little angles to glue in between here. So I'm just gonna free wing this here. Something like that, and then glue them inside here just to give certain things more stability in case they need that. And then also, as what I've probably not mentioned before, is like the first technique that I showed you can also like be used as a joint in case that is practical to you. Good. So we're gonna start now with like looking at how to actually do curved shapes, which I've prepared this one here already just to show you like what I'm talking about. So how the hell did we bend a thick material that is quite rigid, such like this one, around the curved shapes without actually like making it wet or anything? So what we did was, I'm not quite sure what you actually call them, but we kind of scar the material exactly where those chambers are. So what we want to do if we kind of start out with the basics of this shape is we cut out our curved surface, and then we take the kind of wall we kind of want to form around it. But as you've probably noticed, like I'm not sure if you guys see it on Instagram, but there's like on the rough side of the cardboard, you can actually see a little bit of the lines of where the glue from this kind of wavy part of the cardboard is going. And you kind of want to make sure if you scar the material in order to become bendable, that you cut in between those lines. So you want to go from the chamber here, like the opening here, to the opening on the other side directly. So you can definitely do that with the ruler if you want. I sometimes do that I kind of show the scarring of the cardboard on the outside, which can be like a quite nice optical detail if it's done very correctly and like very smoothly. But generally you can totally rip this if it's on the inside of the model. Nobody's going to see it, and if you're like a little bit short on time, you can just like wing it. So I'm just gonna do this here right now, and I'm cutting from the beginning, as you can see, from the beginning of the chamber here downwards, and I try not to cross between the chambers, as this would kind of make things weirdly wobbly in the long run. And again, I'm cutting really, really softly. I'm trying to keep my fingers away from the blade, and I'm also trying to not scar the material on the outer side. So literally just cutting through the top layer of the cardboard. It's probably also worth mentioning in case you do have troubles with like, yeah, you should not do that. You should definitely not do what I just did. If you have problems with like free hand cutting, make sure that you have a stiff wrist while you cut, and like maybe let the movement come out of your elbow and your shoulder, because it makes things quite a lot easier, and you tend to make like more straight lines, which is also a good tip in case you're drawing. Was one of my drawing teachers who always told us to have like really, really stiff wrists if we want to draw a straight line. So we're gonna cut this all the way. So keep doing this. Also, depending on the size of your project, this can be quite therapeutic because it's gonna take you ages doing so. So what happened is, like, we turned a completely rigid material into something that is super nice and flexible and flappy, and we can now use it to kind of bend around the curved part. So now that I'm saying this, I realized I made a mistake, which is, as you've probably remembered before, in order to get a smooth, nice edge, we would have to cut off some of the material first. However, if you're properly prepared and you have a nice knife and you do happen to be as a little bit of nervous as I am sometimes, or just like too quick with some stuff, you can definitely also still do this at a later point after you have scarred the material. You just have to be careful. For this, I'm just going to use this knife because it's a little bit sharper. And I'm just going to cut off a little bit of the material order to be able to pull it off. So I think that's already good. So that's definitely not the optimal case, or like how you should do this. Just trust me, first take off the material and then scar it. Just see, this is the downside of cardboard prototyping if you're doing a live demo and you're nervous. Can be a little bit of a mess, but that's good. I would rather show exactly how it is than trying to glamorize it and then have people frustrated with it. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna start this over because this is horrible and I don't want you guys to get bored with me. So, just gonna cut another piece. This is gonna fit around here. Let's just check. Okay, that's gonna fit. Good. Good. Alright, good. So we're starting with another piece. This time, we're gonna take off the little excess material first, so that we can ensure that we have a really nice and smooth edge afterwards. We're doing it with a really, really smooth cut, not too much pressure. We don't want to hurt the material on the other side, and then we're gonna pull off this here much more smoothly than before, because we're doing it the right order this time. So, good. Again, we have a nice edge. We're now going to scar the material. Again, chamber to chamber, not trying to, or like chamber start to chamber end, let's say it like this, and not trying to cross these wave bridges into the other chambers. There's definitely also other options on how you can make like 2D materials that are quite rigid, bendable. One really good technique is also called lattice hinges, which is a little bit, gonna write that down for you guys later, which is a little bit tricky to do like with freehand, but we can be quite practical in case you're laser cutting, which is where you make like different incisions that are in some ways overlapping and repeating patterns that then make the 2D rigid material really, really flexible. So yeah, as you can see, now I did everything right. I cut the smooth edge off, and I scarred the material on one side. I did not hurt it on the other side, and now this whole thing is nice and bendy, and we can shape it around our curved surface. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a little bit of the glue, and I would definitely recommend not going the full length with the hot glue gun, because in case this is too long or the glue gun is not hot enough, you might just end up creating like a little bit of an obstacle with the glue, and then the edge won't look good. So I would definitely recommend just going little by little and just making sure that the edge, that you can hold onto the edge from all sides, and that everything is in a good position. Also, again, please make sure to not burn your fingers, because they're precious and you need them at a later point. Good. also don't ever worry if there's kind of some excess material at the end. You can always cut that off really, really easily. Good. Okay, so as you can see, we have, again, we have the scarring on the inside. We made the material bendable. We had a little bit of space that we cut off in order to accommodate for the other plate. And now we have a really, really nice and smooth edge, which looks good. And we can cut off the little bit of excess material. I'm just gonna do this freehand right now. You definitely do not have to do everything freehand that I'm doing freehand. But yeah. Especially if things need to be quite accurate, I would definitely recommend just kind of biting the bullet and doing everything with a ruler, which is so much smarter than doing pre-cutting. Look, it's Pac-Man. Okay, good. So those are basically like simple convex shapes. I think, yeah, that's a convex shape. Yeah. But you can also like do all types of shapes with it, and also like a little bit, for example, a little bit more complex things like this here. So what could be tricky here is like if you want to use cardboard, I would definitely recommend if things like if the corners that you try to go around become really, really fine and really like kind of sharp, you might want to step down like thick material thickness wise and go for like the really fine one. Or you can also, if in case it is a little bit nicer for you in the first place, or you kind of don't need a lot of stiffness there, you can also like go for paper right away. So what you want to do is, as same as always, which can be a little bit trickier if you have actually like this kind of really, really fine material, you want to scar the material. And I've done this here already. I've also like properly made space for the other material and made sure that this would fit nicely. No, actually I did not, because I did with another one. Okay, please bear with me. There's going to be a little bit of a view line because I did not cut off enough. As you can see, there's a lot of things that can go a little bit tricky with cardboard prototyping, but yeah. Let's just see. Yeah, we're just gonna make this work. Good. So what we want to do, we kind of will want to see if the material that we're choosing will be able to bend around the corners that we want it to. But in this case, I'm already kind of reaching my limit with an angle like this. It should not be more than that. So something I can do in order to accommodate for excuse me, for like sharper edges or really, really tiny diameters of curves, is that I can technically do something similar to what I've done on the top line here. I can take out some of those scarred cells that we've done, which then basically leaves you with like this tiny gap, for example, that I've prepared here. So if we then try to cut the corner here, it already gives us a lot more accuracy. And what we can then do is we can make a mark. We can make sure to know exactly where the curve is happening or where the edge is happening that we kind of want to accommodate. We're just gonna make a small dot with the knife. And then if you feel comfortable with it, you can do this with the back side of your knife, or you can use a bookbinding tool, or you can use a ruler or something. You can just kind of, also if you use a knife, use the back side of it. Just be sure that you use the back side. Just kind of draw a straight line. You can use the ruler for that. You should definitely use the ruler for that, because this is not very pretty. But yeah, you can use the ruler, and you can use the border to then accommodate exactly the shape you want to have. So I will try to fumble around with this a little bit and glue this together. So I would say in this case, if you have like a weird corner that you kind of want to accommodate, do this type of ruling line, and then make sure that the glue, that the point where you start gluing is right where the weird shape is happening. So you will know that the line you've made is exactly at the right point where you want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of glue here. Oops. And then I'm going to straight put that here. Good. Okay, this is folding up. Good, so we have the large shape, and now we come to the where the convex shape is turning into a concave shape. And again, we're gonna use a little bit of glue. Make sure not to burn our fingers with the hot glue gun. So yeah, this definitely right now isn't perfect, and this could be done more accurately with less nervousness and more rulers and a little bit more time. But as you can see, we've made quite a nice edge, and we've tackled the transition from like a convex to a concave shape, which can also be quite tricky. It looks a little bit like a sled. Okay, good. So if this is done, like you have your shapes, you have different types of angles, you have different types of joints. What more kinds of things can you do with like cardboard? So the thing is, you can definitely paint on cardboard if you want to do so. I would recommend using paints that are not very liquid. So if you have like poster paint or kind of a really thick acrylic or some spray paint that is like quite light, you can do that. But generally, I would say embrace the aesthetics of the cardboard, just go with it. After all, I think cardboard prototyping in itself is a craft that should be also celebrated as such, and people are really, really doing great things with it. Also, I think cardboard prototyping can be a way to make your designs, especially if it's prototypes that you want to try out with people. It can make it a little bit more accessible for people to kind of get them over the fear of like touching a prototype that might be worth a lot or that might have like taken a lot of time from you. So rather than putting something super shiny in front of participators of your workshop, just give them something to play around with that they can actually interact with and that they're not scared of like touching. Yeah, are there any questions? Can people actually pose questions here? I'm just checking in if that is possible. Just gonna wait around and see. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about more stuff. What we could also do, if you guys want to, we can also like have a little bit of a look at the foam material, and we can also have a look at like how to plaster paper over cardboard properly. Yeah, maybe let's do that. Good. So actually the foam cardboard that we're talking about as a little bit of an extra is quite similar to this one, except for the fact that here, instead of having those paper waves, you actually have a foam there. So foam cardboard is a little bit more expensive than normal cardboard, but you can definitely do exactly the same things with it as with normal cardboard. Just gonna, again, make sure your fingers are not in the way of the knife and that you're cutting clean and smoothly. And what you can also do, just as before, is I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna 21. Just gonna cut this in half, approximately. So if I, no, that was definitely not the health. Oh gosh, doesn't matter. Good. So same as before with the cardboard, you can take off a little bit of the material. Just make sure that it's exactly the same amount as the thickness of the material you kind of want to join it with, and again, smoothly cut. Make sure to cut the top layer and make sure to cut the foam, but stay careful to not hurt the lower level. And again, you can pull things off. Depending on what type of foam is in there, that might actually prove to be a little bit trickier than with the cardboard, but it's definitely doable. What you can also do is there's like certain knife setups that you can also add to your exacto that might help get the foam off. So this is a bit rigid. Let's change this real quick. So I'm scratching off the foam. You can do this sideways in case the knife is still a little bit too sharp and you're afraid you might hurt the lower material. You can also do this a little bit sideways, but this is really practical for doing that. So just again, I'm ripping out the foam. I try to not hurt the back side of it, and again, hot glue gun, a little bit of glue. In this case also, like, it depends on which type of foam is in there, but in this case it didn't happen, but it could happen that the foam is melting a tiny little bit. Just make sure to try that out beforehand and accommodate for that in case this does happen. So yeah, again, as you've seen before, nice clear edge, super simple stuff. Good. Yeah, so maybe the next thing we can cover really, really quickly and really shortly is something that I've done with this model here. Similar to what you can see here. This is also a layered laser cut cardboard thing, and I then just covered it with colored paper. So technically this is of course really, really simple. I'm just looking if I have some colored paper here right now, and I think I do. Be right back in a second. Oops. So I'm gonna get this. Gonna start like a little tiny thing right now, just because we still have some time, and I, to be honest, have no idea how much time we have right now, but just gonna cut out. So this is how you salvage like cardboard, like rests, or like leftovers. And what you can do is, like, technically you can use any type of pen also, or I would recommend you actually using pencil. You can just draw shapes. I'm just gonna cut a heart right now, like draw a heart. So, and I'm gonna use this nice, I'm not gonna use a special nice knife, I'm gonna use the normal one, so you guys can see also how do you cut curves. You just make sure you don't cut too harsh. You kind of run around the line. And don't put too much pressure on the knife, just let it run along the line the first time, and then you can cut the rest of the material in the next run. And also make sure to draw a little bit prettier than I did. Especially if you want to gift this to someone. Good. So as you can see, like at some points I already cut through, but most of the time it will take like a second or a third round, just like going along, but the next gets easier every time. Good. What you can also do, in case you see that there's certain points, you can also like slowly from the back side just cut the last bits of lines through. Make sure you only do this where you really see the shape and not freeform cut your shape by accident then. And yeah, you can simply like get it out. And what I would recommend right now is, like, instead of like drawing the same shape again or trying to be super accurate, just use the shape you have as the form for what you want to cut out. And there's like different options you have right now. So you can again cut out the paper. That's really, really simple. But there's different types of kind of what you would say like chronology, or like different types of order of steps that you can take if you want to put paper on your cardboard model. So you could definitely go ahead and cut out all the pieces. For example, also if you have like wall thickness, like this one, or if you have like a shell construct like this one, you could kind of cut out everything beforehand and glue them together and then try to fix everything together. But I think sometimes I would recommend that you also like do glue everything, or like the simple parts, together immediately, in the sense of not actually like assembling the cardboard piece, but assembling the cardboard and the paper you want to have on it. So in this case I'm going to do this really, really quickly. Should normally definitely not do this on your table, but I'm just going to do this because I have like spare paper here. Just gonna, is it smart what I'm doing here right now? Yeah. Just gonna spray paint a little bit. Spray mount on there. Then I'm gonna take the paper and try to make sure that I stick it on there quite evenly. Good. And I can cut off like excess material. I can check from both sides. Is there anything a little bit more? There's like a little bit of an excess material. I'm just gonna cut that off. And what I can do next now, in case I want to make this a little bit more three-dimensional, I can also say, okay, I'm gonna again make a rim like I've done before. For this I'm gonna cut a stripe like this. I would probably, I'm always measuring this a little bit freestyle, I probably need 2 of those. So I'm just gonna do another one. Good, and same as before, we're just gonna scar, we're just gonna scar the material, but we could also already start caching this if we want to. I think we're gonna do this right now. Let's do that. So in this case, if it's like such a simple shape, you could also definitely like use the spray mount ahead of time and just like, just gonna show you different workflows of how you could do that. Just, and then directly glue it onto the paper. Oops, do so accurately. It's weird actually to do everything on the table so you guys can see, because normally I would never spray paint anything or glue spray anything on my table. But yeah, it's a first for everything. So now that this is mounted, we're just gonna cut that out. So really, really simply, trying not to hurt the cardboard. So. And try not to glue the paper to your elbow. Good. This way. So. Good. So we have 2 nice strips for the walls of the heart again. And as we've done before, we're just gonna scar the chambers really quickly. I'm just gonna do this very fast so you guys don't get too bored. And again, I'm cutting really smoothly. I'm not putting too much pressure on the knife or on the cardboard. So also your fingers will be thankful, because if you're cardboard modeling a lot or for a whole day, they will hurt if you put too much pressure on them. I'm also turning around the piece as soon as I don't have enough space to safely put my fingers away. And again, even though the paper is on there, even though it's glued on, we have a very, very nice and bendy surface. And again, we did not do the thing that I was supposed to make you do. We did not cut off excess material, but in this case, you might just want to use it as ornament. Yeah, we're going to use it as ornament. Let's do that. So we're using the properties of the cardboard and the fact that it does have this kind of wavy edge as a feature for our little model design. I'm just going to embrace the fact that I tend to be too quickly with things and then overstep things. Just make sure to keep your fingers safe. Turn the thing around if needed. Good. In this case, since this time I did not prepare the proper gluing line, we can also start using glue a little bit more carefully around the edges. So, I'm definitely starting at the center this time. So. not that. So yeah, kappa prototyping definitely takes a little bit of patience sometimes. A little bit of improvisation. Also, please don't mind that my hand is really shivering when I'm using the glue gun. It's a very old glue gun. And it does not operate super simply, so it takes a little bit of pressure. Okay, again, I'm gonna cut off the excess material. I'm gonna start from the other side. This is a very old glue gun. Set. Good. Again, cutting off the excess. Making sure everything's nice. And we have a little heart. We made a very unbalanced, weird heart. Good, yeah, I think that's basically it. I'm gonna check if there's any questions, but I think there's not. So, yeah, feel free to have a look at this video at any point on mfadt.space. We're gonna put it on IGLIVE, on our IGTV. Also, there's like some really super cool workshops coming up right after this one, and also during the next 2 days. Please feel free to join those as well, both on Zoom and on IGLIVE. And also, if you do have any kind of questions, feel free to reach out to me at any point. My name is, I'm gonna write it down. You can you can find me on Instagram. It's called Mia, and you can ask me any questions. And if you also wanna have a look on YouTube, there's a really cool couple prototyper / product designer that I absolutely binge watched while I was a freshman in product design school, which his name is Jude Pollan. You might know him. I think he worked formerly for Dyson or something, but he's a really cool guy, and he has really nice couple prototyping videos. So hit me up or have a look at the videos. Those are really helpful, and I hope you have fun with oh yeah, oh wait, I'm seeing a question. Can you do again the two-joint cardboard? Oh, I'm not sure what you mean by two-joint cardboard. Could you elaborate? Just checking. Oh yeah, making an intersection. We can definitely make an intersection. I can still do that. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm not seeing your questions. Somehow they're not showing up on the questions. Okay, we're gonna make an intersection real quick, so this is definitely still something you know how to do. Okay, good. So I'm just gonna super fast do that, and then we're gonna get off IGLIVE so you guys can join the other workshop. Okay, good. So